Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome to the very first episode of the Homer and Hater Show. That's right. After a long discussion, well, not that long, we talked about it right before we went on the air. Lance Williams, the hater, and myself, Jeff Hartman, the Homer, have decided to give our Sunday show. And sometimes we might not be available. We might have someone fill in on occasion, as with most shows and podcasts that we have on our platform. But when it's the two of us, the Homer and Hater Show, it's the very first episode. Lance, how's it going?
What's up, Homer? How are you?
I'm fine. I'm great. I mean, it's going to be a fun show based on the headline because I just know that even in our text message discussions prior to the show and, hey, what are we going to talk about? We already kind of were getting into a little bit of back and forth. I'm like, well, let's just save it for the show because that's where it is. So what we're going to do on this show is we're going to have Steeler topics as most shows. And we're going to do a rundown of the week that was in our podcast platform so that basically something that maybe you missed a show and you want to go back and check it out. And I have an interesting ending here for Lance that I haven't even told him about. And we'll talk about that at the very end of the show. So stay tuned. But the headline of this episode is all about Devin Bush. You know, it's funny. Everyone talks about Minkah Fitzpatrick. You know, everyone talks about Minkah Fitzpatrick, rightfully so. TJ Watt gets a lot of publicity, as he should. But I was writing an article for BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, and I was reading about the 2019 draft class, and NFL.com writer out of the 4 AFC North teams said that the Steelers had the best 2019 draft class amongst all 4 teams. They were giving a B+ grade, while the Ravens, Browns both got Bs, and the Bengals got a C+. We're not here to talk about the grades itself, because as Lance and I said to each other before we went on the air, it is so subjective, and they've had so little time in the NFL. For instance, I was looking at a guy like Justin Lane. The Steelers spent a 3rd-round pick on this cornerback from Michigan State who did nothing but play special teams. So how are we supposed to grade him as a cornerback when he saw absolutely 0 snaps there? That's what I don't, so you just don't know. But this still, like I told Lance, it's the slow season when it comes to content. So until March 18th rolls around, the new league year gets here. They talked a lot about Devin Bush, the Steelers' #1 pick. And so I sent Lance a text like, man, I think we should talk about his upside. And Lance said, what?
I have no idea what upside is. And that's like the hater part of me because, upside is so amorphous. Like, what is that? Like, does that mean? I just have no idea when guys say upside. I mean, because the assumption is never that guys, and actually most players typically kind of stay the same or actually get worse. And the reason why I say that is because, part of, the NFL is that guys don't play long. A lot of that is due to injury and so forth, but guys get recycled because they aren't good players. And so a lot of times guys have no upside. And I guess we're assuming upside is they continue to get better, that when you have upside, your ceiling is fairly high. I guess with a Devin Bush, when you talk about upside, you're talking about, does he have the potential to be the best inside linebacker in the National Football League, given the fact that he was a 1st-round draft pick? I think he was the 2nd inside linebacker drafted last year after the other
White.
Devin in Tampa Bay. So I guess when you say upside, I mean, I guess that means Pro Bowler, all pro.
Let me define it. Let me tell you what my upside is. We've seen it, I think with rookies, even if you're talking about potential upsides, I look at if you can't have this discussion before they've stepped on the field. A lot of people try to. A lot of people want to talk about projections for rookies when they've never even played a professional game in their entire career. I'm saying that the fact that Devin Bush has played 16 games in his NFL career, which is not a lot, we have seen flashes, whether it is plays like I think about the interception in coverage against the Baltimore Ravens. I believe he was covering Mark Andrews. That was a very good play that made me say, wow, that's upside for me. That's potential. There are some times where you see rookies that don't even have those flashes. For instance, Benny Snell Jr., did he have those flashes that made you say, wow? Any of them at all strike you in 2019?
No.
Of course. So that's one of the things.
No.
um, so for me, it's one of those situations where with Devin Bush, when I think about like upside, I'm not even thinking about long-term projections of Pro Bowl or All Pro or the best inside linebacker. It's the Steelers made an aggressive move, and this is what I wanted to talk about. The Steelers made an aggressive move from 20 to 10 last year's draft. They traded away a lot of draft stock, and what are they getting for that? That's a good question there. Mr. T, Steelers fan says upside. Will he be better than Shazier before he got hurt, comparing each rookie season? That's interesting, Lance. What do you think about that?
I think so. I think so. I think, and I'm going to get killed for this when I say this, and thus I don't feel like I'm forced to be the hater, but I feel like naturally a lot of stuff that I say will be construed as being the hater. I always thought
Yeah.
that Ryan Shazier was overrated. I thought Ryan Shear was a physical specimen. I thought Ryan Shazier's physical skill set is what the position was going to morph into in the National Football League, being a lighter guy in the box with the ability to cover tight ends, to sort of be a will backer that was a little more dynamic than your typical will backer because of coverage ability. But I thought that Ryan Shazier was oft injured. Unfortunately, he got injured in a way that may derail his career forever. I thought he was an inconsistent tackler. But I think at his physical best, his upside, if we're defining it like you were saying, Jeff, was through the roof. Yeah. However, on a play-by-play basis, I thought there was a level of inconsistency to his play that I did not see demonstrated by Devin Bush. I think when I look at the two in their rookie seasons, there were things that Shazier did that were just like, wow, did you see him do that? There were some things like that for Bush, but not to the extent to me as Shazier. But on a play-by-play basis, when you're talking about being in the right places, being more of a sure tackler, and just being more consistent, I think Devin Bush will be the better player. Thus, maybe he will have more upside.
I agree with you 100%. And I guess here's a question for you. I'm putting you on the spot here, and it's not an easy question to answer. If you were to say, hey, here's a comp that I could see Devin Bush developing into. I saw that comment by Ali. Who's a player that's currently in the NFL that's a seasoned veteran that you say, you know what? We could actually see Devin Bush potentially turn into this type of inside linebacker? Is there anyone that you think of or that comes to mind that you're like, if I'm trying to give you a visual of what I expect Devin Bush, if everything goes as planned, if everything, in terms of his overall preparedness and his development and all that stuff, the maturation process, who's that comp?
Actually, as you asked that, it's not anybody currently in the league, but it's a former gold jacket guy, a recent gold jacket guy, and that's Brian Urlacher.
Really?
When I look at Bush, his physical ability, I think in stature, they're around the same size. I don't think Urlacher was too much bigger than Devin Bush, maybe about 10 pounds different. Maybe Urlacher was around 240-ish, 245-ish. Bush is probably around 235, in the 240 range. But their ability to play side to side, sideline to sideline, also their ability to cover. I think Urlacher was probably maybe a bigger hitter. But I think of Urlacher, if put on the spot, I think of Urlacher. I don't want to put the pressure on him to be Brian Urlacher, but I think he has the physical upside, since we're talking about upside, to be a dynamic player like an Urlacher. Hopefully, he won't be as injured as Urlacher, but I think that the physical skill set, when using your definition in terms of upside, is there. I think physically, depending on all the other intangibles, if he stays healthy, if he continues to work, if he continues to grow in the defense, and if he's continuing to be put into positions where his physical capabilities can be utilized to their utmost, then I'm thinking Urlacher.
I see. I don't see that comp personally, and everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I see more of a Luke Kuechly type. because I think he's more athletic than Urlacher. Urlacher was that old school. He reminded me of like the neck roll on he didn't have it, but they used to have the neck pad back in the 90s and stuff. They used to have the neck pad and all the big collar, just downhill, just go and get you. I guess I expect, and this is tough because expectations are different for everyone. I expect Devin Bush to be more dynamic. Urlacher was a great linebacker. He was a hitter. I don't remember him as much of a coverage backer, and I'm expecting Bush to be more of that. I guess he struggled there as a rookie. I'm not going to say that, but Luke Kuechly was more of an all-around linebacker. I guess I expect Devin Bush to be more of that ilk than it is Brian Urlacher. Yeah, I understand what you're saying though. So we'll see. I don't know
if he's either one of those guys. It's a good thing. And notice we're talking about Kuechly
right.
and Urlacher, right? We're talking about great inside linebackers. We're not talking about average guys. I mean, we're talking about great guys. Well, I would say another guy he might remind you of is Vander Esch. He might remind you of Vander Esch and the two inside backers for Dallas, who are two very dynamic physical guys that run sideline to sideline. Is that Jalen Smith, if I'm not correct, who's the other inside linebacker with Vander Esch? So I think he's in that mold too. Vander Esch. I love your comparison to Urlacher. Excuse me, not to Urlacher, but to the outstanding inside linebacker from Carolina. I love that comparison a little bit better than mine. Unfortunately, he retired, I think a little premature, but maybe not premature for him since he made the decision. But I mean, but that's what inside linebacker is starting to look like. So, with comparisons, like if you've ever bought a house in real estate, it's comps, right? It's just comps. 3 bedroom, 2 bath. This is $425,000. So I could see where people are looking at his physical capabilities and trying to see what that matches up from a comparison and an upside potential with different players. One thing about Kuechly, and the same thing is said about Bush, Kuechly very cerebral as well. And the funny thing about Bush might be better athletically than Kuechly. So sky's the limit for him.
Let's talk. I have one more question about the inside linebacker since we're talking about Devin Bush. I just feel like it's appropriate. Mike Tomlin openly said multiple times during 2019 in his press conferences how with rookies like Deontay Johnson and Devin Bush primarily, the need to kind of rein them back a little bit. It's a long season, much longer than a college football season. And that you saw later in the season, Devin Bush wasn't the full-time linebacker. He was kind of in there in certain spots. Let's assume that they keep Mark Barron and they don't cut him for cap space. Let's just make that assumption right now. How would you see Devin Bush's role from year 1 to year 2? Do you see him being an every down linebacker? And if so, who's playing next to him?
Yeah, I mean, he has to play every down. If we're talking about upside, if you can't be an every down linebacker, then there's an issue, right? There's an absolute issue. So my assumption is if you take him that high and he played as well as he did in his rookie season, that you hope that he grows in terms of what's between his ears and his understanding of the defense, that he can stay on the field for 3 plays, that he's an every down linebacker. In terms of who's going to be next to him, I would guess it's going to be Vidi Vici. I would guess that it's going to be Vince Williams, given where the Steelers are from a cap perspective. I think that Mark Barron is a player that could be a cap casualty.
Were you pleased with Devin Bush this year as a rookie? Did you expect more? Just kind of neutral on it?
Kind of neutral. I mean, I'm a guy that likes to give rookies time to grow. I'm sort of a check back with me after 3 seasons. And we can give, there's a lot more film on a player, and you can give a better, accurate breakdown of what the player is and what his potential could be. I think it's just pretty tough after a year, because I think it's actually especially tough for players in their rookie season that bust out and are really good in their rookie season. It's like, where do they go from here? How do you add to your game if you had that dominant rookie season? How do you add those different layers and dimensions to keep you at that level?
Freezing up a little bit, Lance. I think Lance is frozen. Up there he is. All right, we're having some technical difficulties with Lance. Let's get him out of the stream real quick. Lance, you're kind of breaking up there a little bit. I'm not sure if that's just on my end or if that's in general. We'll make sure he is all squared away prior to bringing him back in. The next topic that we're going to discuss, and if you're in the live chat right now, you can certainly talk about it. I'll go ahead and Ben says he's technically difficult. He's difficult on more than one way. All right, let's see if Lance, you there? Here we go. Hold on. All right, you there? You're muted there, buddy. Get your unmute your microphone on the screen there, Lance. Believe it or not, this is our first episode, but it's not his first time using this software.
Yes. It's the word in the corner that says unmute.
Yeah, shocker.
Yes, UNMUTE.
All right, so now we have the next topic, which is we're going to switch from Devin Bush, and we're going to go to Kevin Colbert. Kevin Colbert spoke with the media this week, and he talked about a lot of stuff. He talked about everything from Ben Roethlisberger, his recovery. He said that so far so good. Everything that he's heard, everything that he has, gotten from Coach Tomlin as well as the medical staff is that everything is good right now. Now, his next appointment is 5 days from now. This is being recorded on the 16th. That's the 21st of February. That is when you have the next step for Ben Roethlisberger. He talked about how everything's good there. He talked about how, for instance, he is happy doing year by year with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he stated even that as long as the Steelers will want him to be there, he will be there. Because there was some speculation that when he went to that year-by-year contract that, maybe he was kind of coming to the end of his rope, that he didn't really do that anymore. And I think people understood that. He's been the general manager for a long time, dating back to Cowher's time in Pittsburgh. That he was extremely excited, more so excited this year for this upcoming season than last season. That's something we talked about on the Steelers preview. But Lance, I want to get your thoughts on his comments that he is more excited for 2020 than he was for 2019. What are your thoughts on that?
Those are weird. First of all, his contract situation feels weird to me.
You there, Lance?
Yeah, I'm there. Can you hear me?
Okay. Go ahead. All right.
His contract situation feels weird to me. Why don't you just sign a long-term deal? It's not like if you fire the guy, it's going to be a cap hit. It's not like it's going to be dead money against the cap. So that seems weird in terms of him doing it year to year. It feels weird. So that's my comment about that. In terms of him being excited, that feels weird too. But I can understand it because they have to do a lot of work to get this team ready to compete for a championship. And I can understand the excitement there. From the offensive side of football, like there are some serious questions. You don't know about your quarterback. I think from a talent perspective, at the skill position, there's some work to be needed to be done. I think at the offensive line, this is a lot of they're at a weird transitional spot to me on the offensive side of football. So if you're a competitor, I understand why he's excited to build this, to try to build this and try to get back to where he feels the Steelers should be, and that's competing for championships. I would love to. I love that he's excited. I think as a fan base, we wouldn't want to hear him not be excited, because you better be excited. If you haven't made the playoffs the last two seasons, you better be chomping at the bit to figure out whatever you have to do. And I think for him, less is more for him, possibly. He has to do a lot more with a lot less this year. So I think he's probably, in a weird way, excited about that. Like, how can I get the most out of this draft with limited amount of draft picks, no first rounders? I'm excited to really show the league that I'm really good at evaluating talent, and I'm going to make this draft one of the best, even though I don't have a first round pick. So I get where he's coming from.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. And to me, when he talks about being excited for 2020, yeah, more so than 20. Think about what happened in 2019. Antonio Brown Richard Gummy Richards gone. Mr. Third and Fifth gone. Butt Naked and Rob, Le'Veon Bell gone. And so already on offense, you're losing two of your biggest playmakers. And so you're still thinking, okay, we're going to have a younger wide receiving core. We still have that offensive line. Ben Roethlisberger is going to be there. And it's one of those things where you look at the Steelers now in 2020, and you have, albeit a couple more proven commodities. I think James Washington showed a little bit in 2019. I think that obviously Deontay Johnson showed a lot if Ben Roethlisberger can come back and be healthy, but especially the defense. In 2019, the defense was not what it was. I should say going into 2019, it was not what everyone thought it was going to be until we talked about the Minkah effect. And when they got Minkah Fitzpatrick, seem to think that, it's incredible how one person can change a defense, but the stats don't lie. So I'm kind of interested to see how this draft will play out. We've talked off air before about how we've convinced ourselves that they should be going offensive line with that second pick, and Absolutely. That the offensive line is where they could kind of transform this offense. Do you want to speak on that a little bit?
If you guys have listened to I said it's over the last couple of weeks, and I think this goes to what Thaddeus Kennedy is saying about dynamic offensive weapons. And we've talked a lot about how it's key to score close to 28 points per game and sort of have a point differential of about 8 to 10 points, and how that the passing game is where you win, I think, in the National Football League now. Yes, but all of that starts on your offensive line. If your offensive line is good, you can be anything offensively if you have a good quarterback. You can be a pounded out team. You could be a passing team. You could be a play action offense. You can be any type of offense you want, but it all starts up front. And I think they're at a point where they have to make this offensive line as good as it can be. Because I think we've saw, in the past several years when the offensive line was very good. And of course it helped to have Mr. Butt Naked and Rob, Mr. Third and Fifth, AKA Mr. Gummy Richards, and all of the other cast of characters. But that offensive line was much better as well. And so I think they've got to get that offensive line back to humming at top 5 in the National Football League status. And then we can see where it goes on the offensive side of football.
I agree 100%. So let's see how that plays out. Now let's go to our rundown and looking at the episodes, podcast from the past week. And like I said, you might want to go back and check one out if you missed it, give you a little bit of our glimpse into those, as well as our takes on the topics that were discussed in the headline of those shows. We'll start off with the Steelers Hangover. That show is going to be transitioning to the Steelers Q&A. Brian Anthony Davis and Tony DeFeo said they would like more of a free-flowing, free-for-all style show. And so there'll still be a topic that they're going to discuss right off the bat. And after that, it's kind of your show. They're going to get to talk with them in the live chat. And Brian,
it might be a little literal for when we're talking about bad. He might actually be hungover from the weekend.
He might. We don't know. But anyways, on this episode of the Steelers Hangover, they talked about how they believe, and Lance, I'll get your take on this, that the positives strongly outweigh the negatives for the Steelers heading into 2020. This is looking at the entire team, defense, offense, everything combined. Do you think the Steelers' positives outweigh the negatives heading into 2020?
Did they? What particular positives did they name?
Well, defense was strong, obviously. They even went to special teams. Chris Boswell's kicking back in the 2017 form compared to 2018. Jordan Berry sucks. We know that. They did talk about the offense, though, and how, you have a wide receiver like Deontay Johnson, James Washington. You hope Juju Smith-Schuster comes back healthy. And then, obviously, Ben Roethlisberger. Now, there are some negatives. The offensive line didn't play as well. James Conner gets hurt every season. They couldn't run the ball. They didn't score even 28 points in the entire season. So they weren't all positives, but they just said that they felt that the positives about this team outweigh the negatives heading into next season.
Well, in light of the name of our show, the Homer and Hater, I'm going to disagree. I don't think that
Shocker.
I don't think the defensive highlights are bright enough and positive enough to hide the fact that they're an offense in transition. I don't think they have in the running game. I think all of the backs are average. The offensive line is aging. You have a quarterback going into his 17th year with I'm not even going to say Tommy John. I'm going to say, a Bob Jackson arm injury. We'll just coin it with some name because they won't say Tommy John. You have a team that has some cap issues because said quarterback counts 17% against the cap. And your backup quarterbacks they don't give me warm and fuzzies whatsoever. So I would disagree with those guys. I think at best it's probably even. I would agree with them if we knew the status of where Ben was from a health perspective. But I think not knowing where Ben is from a health perspective, I don't think the positives outweigh the negatives. Because if he's not healthy, it's a wrap.
You're right. And we've talked about that before. I do think that the positives mainly on defense because I just don't see a lot of weak links on the defense. We know that can make up a lot, but like you said, it all comes down to Ben Roethlisberger's health, and that's going to be the ultimate, in my opinion, that's going to be what's going to sway him one way or the other. From contender to pretender is going to depend on one person, Ben Roethlisberger.
And we will see, the 21st is what, about 3 days away? No, 21st next Friday. Next Friday.
Yes.
Okay. So check back with us on Yeah, I Said It. Yeah, I said it. I want to see Ben throwing peanuts, considering he can't throw football.
Throwing anything.
Throw anything except people under the bus.
He could throw beer pong balls. He could be throwing cornhole bags. I don't care. Just let him throw something.
Yes.
So we can kind of get a gauge as to what's going to happen in 2020.
Well,
all right. So then the Tuesday show, Dave Schofield was joined by a special guest, Kevin Smith, who is also known as Cliff Harris is Still a Punk, who's a writer for BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, very educated, does a lot of film room breakdowns for us. He's very, very good at what he does. He writes one article a week that typically runs Tuesday or Wednesday, and they talked all about the running backs. And the question on hand, and Lance will ask you this question, is should the Steelers look for one stud running back, or should they take the running back by committee approach, something that I don't think they've ever in Mike Tomlin's tenure, although Mr. Smith did disagree with that. He said that the year that they went with Isaac Redman, Jonathan Dwyer, and Chris Rainey was the closest thing that they had to a running back by committee approach.
And it was bad.
It was not good, but that was so. Your thoughts, do they need to go out and get a stud running back? This is assuming that you don't think that James Conner is that stud running back, or is it running back by committee in 2020?
What's the famous, I'm the cliche killer, if you guys don't know, but what's the cliche, Jeff, when you talk about when you have two quarterbacks? If you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one. What is that cliche?
Yeah.
When you have two, you really don't have one. Well,
I mean, you just said it.
Okay.
You have two quarterbacks, you don't have one.
Well, if you have three, let's just extend it to running backs. I mean, at some point, I hear running back by committee, but I think the talent has to be better. Like if you're going to do running back by committee, I think the assumption is you do that because you don't have a stud back. But how about having a couple of good backs? If you're going to do running back by committee, have better ones than the Steelers have. I don't have confidence in any of the backs. So I think the easier approach is to have a stud and backs that complement the stud. A third down back, sort of when, just a good lead back, a good backup, and a good situational back. Pretty easy. How you find that guy, I don't know, but no, I don't have confidence in the back. So I would rather have a very good back and two situational backs, a back that can, catch it out of the backfield, so on and so forth. They were much better. Obviously when they had Mr. Butt Naked and Robbed, I like that approach.
I don't think they're going to add to the running back depth chart at all this season. Here's the way I'm picturing it. You can agree or disagree. Let me know. James Conner is going to be the guy. As long as he's healthy, he's the guy, because that's what Mike Tomlin does. Whether you like it or not, Mike Tomlin likes to have his one guy, and that's his guy. He's going to run the wheels off him. We've talked about that ad nauseum on these episodes. Now, second is the backup's going to be Benny Snell Jr. He will be the guy that comes in and spells Conner, and it's going to be maybe, but that depends on the how they decipher the labor there. That's going to be up to the situation and the health of the players, all that stuff. I think you're going to see Jalen Samuels, and if Kareth White makes the team, they're going to be used in specific settings and situations. They're not going to be in any type of running back by committee where it's their series, go in. I don't see that happening. And that also, to me, makes both of those players expendable, meaning if they do get a free agent running back, even if it's a guy on the cheap, or if they do go out and draft a player, one of those two players is deemed expendable because they were not going to be in the plans as well. So that's just the way I see the running backs shaking out this year. I don't think they're going to go running back by committee. James Conner is their guy until he gets hurt again. And sadly, we can expect that.
Let me ask you this. The way this is sounding, the only prominent free agent, or not free agent, the only prominent addition to the offense as it stands right now before the draft would be the return of Ben Roethlisberger, right?
Probably, yeah.
If that's the case, is the return of Ben Roethlisberger alone enough to get them back to the year before he got hurt, to 27 points per game? So they would have to average basically 9 more points per game to get to 27. Is his mere addition enough to get them to that point? Or let me ask it this way. How many points is Ben worth to that offense per game?
I'd say at least a touchdown.
So a touchdown get him to 25? I'd say
at least a touchdown.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And that would be right about where I expect him to be, anywhere from 23 to 25 a game. And if you look at the defense, if they can keep him off 20, you win games. Is it going to be close? Yeah. That's the Steelers at this point.
Yeah.
Unless they're playing Cincinnati, they're not going to blow anybody out.
I'm hoping that it's 26 more so than 23. That field goal difference is big in terms of how many close games you play. That gets you possibly to 2 possession leads late as opposed to 1. Whereas we've talked about it in the past, the way the PI is called in the National Football League, you put yourself in position to lose every game when the refs make bad calls. So we'll see. So it's interesting that you say Ben is worth 7 points. I hope so. Because 7 points would get them close to 26. I could see that. That doesn't seem far-fetched to me when you say it that way.
The reason I say 7 points and a touchdown is based on the fact that I watched last season, and how many times were the drives just completely stalled in the red zone or turnovers in the red zone. And I'm not saying that Roethlisberger isn't prone to turning the ball over. We know he can be. He's also smarter in the red zone when the field gets short and can make plays. I mean, there were times where Rudolph and or Duck Hodges, you literally knew that they weren't going to be able to solve the equation and they were going to have to settle for a field goal. And that was the offense in 2019. I think Roethlisberger brings a different element to the offense. And so I think it's worth a touchdown. I really do. So we'll see if that plays out. Moving along, the standard is a standard. You can go check out our show from Wednesday. We're not going to rehash the Minkah Fitzpatrick talk about does he need to do more. And that was hinting at his comments made at the Super Bowl about how he wants to be more of a Swiss Army knife and be moved around the defense more. So go out and check that out. We talked about on that same episode whether fans appreciate Ben Roethlisberger. And on the Steelers preview, we tackled that topic a lot. And it was probably the majority of our first episode was based on that. And I know you watched it and called it the Ben Love Fest, and I get it. I understand that you don't like Ben Roethlisberger, and we know that. And I love Ben Roethlisberger, and yeah, that's true. You hate him, you can't stand him, so that's fine. That's fine. We don't need to talk about that. Again.
I don't hate Ben.
But the one thing I do want to ask you is,
I don't hate
one
Ben.
of the after party topics. I want to ask you an after party topic that we discussed. And this is the after party is second podcast that we run after the preview that starts talking about football, and then we kind of just go wherever it goes. It led us to talking about old school WWF wrestling this past week. So if you've never listened to that and you like crazy off the wall stuff, we even talked about how Lance and I tag team against Brian and Dave would be a very entertaining match. And Lance, you mentioned it on your show how you were going to be throwing. What did they call what do you call bricks?
Alley biscuits. That was a term that I learned when I was living in Atlanta. They used to call bricks alley biscuits. So yes, I would have alley biscuits, stuff to throw in their eyes, the razor in my trunks. I'd have all that stuff, the brass knuckles. I would not fight fair because I think as big as Dave is, you might have to hit Dave with a bat, 2 trash cans, brass knuckles.
Yep.
And everything that can.
Well, I told him, I said, if we're doing this match, it's an old school match with the skirt on the ring where you can go under the ring and get chairs and all that stuff. Those were always fun.
And but the question be a cage match to a cage match.
Oh, you want to go Hell in a Cell, or are we just talking about old school Hell in a Cell or old school cage? Where remember the cage was just around the ring and it was an open top. Which one are you talking about?
Open top. That's old school, right?
There
you could jump on top.
Yes.
And you can do the snooker leap from the top of the cage. I saw him, I think, hit Bob Backlund with that. And I think Bob Backlund kicked out.
No way. So, well, I want to ask you about the after party, the question we started the after party with. And Thaddeus says that you should join the after party one time. That would be great. The after party question was, is there been a player in the NFL that you've ever watched? Alley apples. Has there ever been a player that you watched in the National Football League that you said, man, I would love if that guy was a member of the Steelers? So never played a snap for Pittsburgh, but just always had that Steeler feel to him. Is there any player that comes to mind?
Yeah, there's a player that comes to mind. I think, Steeler fans might be upset when I say it, but a player that comes to mind for me was a guy in the division, and that's Mr. Deer Antler himself. Ray Lewis, man. Ray Lewis can you imagine Ray Lewis as that Ray Lewis playing for the Steelers? Man, he'd have been deified in Pittsburgh. He would have had statues everywhere. And he'd have just been in the long line of Steeler great linebackers, Lambert, Lewis, Ham. I mean, he'd have been great as a Steeler. He'd have been awesome. Can you imagine a defense with him and Troy Polamalu in the same defense? That'd have been crazy. That'd have been crazy. Watching him just go nuts and kill people. Oh, my goodness. Well, allegedly.
Let's not use that.
Excuse me. Oops. Excuse me.
Let's not get into the Atlanta situation with the white suit and all that stuff. But yeah, it's funny you say there was a division rival. I actually went in Division 2. I know that Dave said Mike Allstott, the fullback, was always a favorite of his.
He went to Stanford.
Brian Anthony Davis said Rob Gronkowski. He said, put that tight end on this team. I want to see what that would look like. And that's dangerous. I said I went with the fun route because if I'm writing articles about the team and I want someone that's interesting but fun, and I love this guy. I really did. I love Chad Ochocinco, man. Chad Johnson was hysterical to me. Even when he was playing for the Bengals, I thought he was so. He actually made the game. He brought some. He just made it lighter. It wasn't so serious for him. He sent Ike Taylor Pepto-Bismol before the game. He did stuff like that. And I asked the guys on the show, I said, who's the last player that you can remember in the National Football League that just joked around with the media, that just had fun playing the game? And they couldn't think of anyone. Because it's gotten so serious and so crazy with the business and the money they're making. I get all that. I said, give me Chad Johnson. He'd be great for the website. He'd be great for the podcast. I'd love to have him on the Steelers if we could go around and do it again. Oh my gosh, Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu in the same defense. Get out of here. Yes. Be the best safety tandem ever.
How about this one? I guess that's the same one. Well, me and clicking. How about this guy? for the Steelers. Darrell
Revis Island.
Revis. And he's from Pittsburgh. Well,
Pittsburgh
he's from
native.
Aliquippa.
Yep.
So he's from Aliquippa. So that'd have been nuts. So too, Sizzle would have been nuts for the Steelers too. Sizzle would have been nuts on the Steelers as well. I would have loved to have Sizzle. Plus, Ben might not be hurt right now if Sizzle hadn't hit him so many times. So true. Sizzle would have been great on the Steelers too, because Sizzle was funny too. Like Sizzle fully embraced the whole rivalry, and Sizzle brought it. I mean, Sizzle brought it every time out when he played the Steelers, and I think Steeler fans could appreciate Ray Lewis and Sizzle because they played the game in a physical fashion. They gave their all. And, just hearing Ray Lewis say the Steelers were overrated after being through 6 touchdowns against them, it was just hilarious. I'm like, dude,
yeah,
he threw 6 TDs on your head. How are they overrated?
It's fun to talk about that type of stuff. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, because the other shows Lance did, I said it, and he talked about, what was your I said it topic this week?
Oh, man, I'm not sure. That was Friday. Probably. I had a lot of proper number 12 this weekend.
That was actually Thursday. You recorded it on Thursday, so we have a little bit more time. Go back and check his I said it, but your Steelers burning questions. We've talked about Antonio Brown on this show, but the last question I have for you, Lance, actually doesn't even involve football. I know you're a sports guy.
Yes.
I know you're a baseball guy. I want to get your thoughts on the Houston Astros cheating scandal. What are your thoughts on that?
Being a former baseball player, I played baseball probably from about 7 to about 18, American Legion, pony ball, all that stuff. Tried to walk on in college, all that stuff. Played tons of baseball. They really cheated. I mean, we stole signals in high school, and we had ways in which we could relay signals, but it was during a game. I mean, we didn't have a system called
that's not illegal.
That's not illegal, but we didn't have code breaker and all this stuff. What impressed me the most about the Astros was that they were relaying signals on the road. I was like, how do you steal guys' signals on the road? They were beating trash cans like war drums. I mean, it's really bad. And I'm an old school baseball dude. It's chin music all year, especially if I'm a divisional team. Oh, it's chin music. It's sweet chin music every game, all the time. If I was an owner, I say, look, man, we'll pay all your fines. All your fines will go to charity. Hopefully that's how baseball does it. But don't worry, it won't come out of your pocket. It's sweet chin music all season. And I'm not one for taking championships, but man, this is about as close as it gets. And hearing Correa defend Altuve, saying Altuve didn't cheat, he didn't really want, I'm like, look, man, get out of here with all that. Your word is trash. And I feel like, man, it should just be a trail of tears for them for the entire season. That guy should be getting plunked every game, every series, all season. Like, you just got to take it for this year. And, hey, if you want to cheat, you got to deal with the repercussions. And I'm old school. I be throwing at them guys all the time, especially Altuve, Correa, and some of those guys. Oh, man, they would get it. They get one behind the head, ears, bouncing stuff. Oh, man, it would be really bad. We would go after those guys every series, every game, at least for the first quarter of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt, man. I played as long as you did. I was a catcher all through from the moment the kids started to pitch, I caught until I graduated. And I got a couple colleges looked at me. They didn't have the major I was looking for. And so I decided I didn't play. I played lacrosse in college, but still, I played baseball all the way up until college. And as a catcher, you understand that stealing signs is not illegal. Good teams do that. They steal the third base coach's signs. They find out what the indicator is on their signs, and they can tip off players for a bunt might be coming, or they're going to do a hit and run, or they might be trying to steal here, and you call a pitch out as it's a chess match. It's the inside game of baseball. That's why people always say that they don't like baseball. It's because they don't get it. They don't understand the thought process of, runner on first, 2 out, 2-2 count. What is the pitcher thinking? What are they going to do here? Are they going to run a fastball high and inside to try to get him to swing? Are they going to go low and away? As a catcher, because you have to be that type of player, that type of thinker. There's a reason why when a catcher knows when there's a runner on second, you go to whatever indicator you want. It could be first sign, third, fourth. You can put down as many signs as you want, and that says that they can't steal the signs, because there were teams that we played even in high school, and we were a very good team, that they would, tip the cap across the jersey, tells you what pitch is coming. That's not illegal. Man, the stuff they were doing, how did they absolve the players is what I'm saying.
Ridiculous.
I don't get that at all.
It's ridiculous. You got guys, you got managers getting fired, losing jobs. The players are just like, just another start of a new season. It's just absolutely ridiculous. You know what my indicator would be when I played the Astros? If I was the opposite team, it'd be Bufangu. That would be my indicator. That would be my indicator. My indicator might be my middle finger. Like, you know what's coming. Let me indicate this. Yep. You better duck, because guess what? I'm going to bring somebody in that we can get suspended because they're like the 28th pitcher that we don't care. And his job is going to be to throw at certain guys. Just flat out.
Yeah.
Like absolutely. Like, it would be old school retribution. And there's limits to cheating. Famously, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. I mean, there's difference than having Vaseline on the bib so you can get extra snap and spin on your breaking ball. That's different than what the Astros were doing. As I've learned more about it, I was like, wow, these results aren't legitimate. I was like, these are not legitimate. A hitter at the skill of Altuve, if he knows everything that's coming, you're going to get him out still because it's baseball, but it's going to be a lot harder. It's going to be a lot harder. He's probably going to hit above 300 against you easily if he knows what's coming. I don't care who you are. He's going to beat you.
Yeah, look at the splits that these Astros players had home versus on the road. Now, you said they were stealing signs on the road as well, but they weren't as concocted as they were at home. And that little tiny ballpark that they have there in Houston with that short porch and left field. But it's one of those situations where it's like, holy cow, like, they're hitting 400 at home and they're hitting 130 on the road when they get in the playoffs. Oh my gosh, like, this is so blatant. All right, so deal with it. Says, come on, Lance, don't be letting all that hate lead you to hurting guys. No, see, baseball, unlike football, you take care of stuff yourself.
Yes,
it's one of those situations where you say, you know what? Hey, and even in high school, if I was catching and I put the middle finger down, we were brushing the guy back or hitting him, and that was in high school. Because that's just the way you did it. If they're gonna take our best, we played a lot of rivalry games in high school, and there were times where they would brush back our best player. Well, guess what we're gonna do to your best player? He better be ready. It's just the way
deal with it. They're gonna have to deal with it. I mean, sorry, I'm not as sophisticated as some of the listeners on the live chat. I am from Manchester. I am from the North Side. So we would just have to deal with it that way. I mean, I'm a guy, when I was managing in high school, I was the high school coach. I mean, I got into an argument with the deaf guy because I thought his team was cheating.
How does that work? By the way?
It was
you're just yelling and he's just staring at you?
I'm yelling and he's doing sign. And he's doing sign in a way where you could tell he's pissed, and I'm yelling at him, and he can't hear me, and I can't understand sign language. It was absolutely hilarious because we both couldn't understand each other. And the umpire is like, look, man, it's about 6:00. I got hot dinner on the stove. We need to get this done. So it was pretty bad. I mean, I will admit, they were stealing bases. They were up like maybe 17-0. And they were squeezed, bunting, stealing, and stuff like that.
Right, there you go.
And I was just livid. And so, yeah, I told my guys to start brushing dudes back, start bouncing breaking balls, trying to hit guys, throw behind heads, all types of stuff, step off, never pitch. Oh, it was bad. It got really bad. That's my shining moment as a baseball coach in high school, was that I had an argument with a deaf guy. It's great. It was awesome. God. So deal with it. If you hear that story, I'd be saying plunk guys. If I were the Dodgers, and I don't like the Dodgers, I'm a Giant fan and a Pirate fan, but I hate the Dodgers. I hate Dodger blue, all that corny stuff. All that stuff is terrible. If I were the Dodgers, it'd be a plunk fest.
It will
would
be a
be
plunk fest.
it'd be
And
a
you know what?
plunk fest.
You know what's hysterical is Dusty Baker, the manager, is saying that he wants the Major League Baseball to send out some memo to all teams that they shouldn't be hitting the Astros players this season. You know what, Dusty? You weren't a part of that, number one. But number two, you were in charge of hitting Andrew McCutchen repeatedly when you were the manager of the Reds. So shut up about don't be hitting my guys when you went out there and hit the Pirates' best player for years. For years. Go get out of here, Dusty Baker. Now, what's Brian O'Toole say? Lance probably also cusses out little ladies at church.
Yeah, I'm competitive. I'm
Goodness.
probably cheating. I mean, hey, look, I mean, I cheated in cards, I cheated in Monopoly, I cheated in most games, because I was always trying to win. Most things I've cheated in. But that is beyond just cheating. That's beyond the typical cheating ain't trying limits in baseball. I mean, you understand in baseball, like that's part of the game. Cheating is part of the game of baseball, but what they were doing, it doesn't even do the word cheating justice. I mean, they absolutely altered the results. I mean, it's really bad.
Now we could get into we could do a whole hour on this probably because I don't really feel like sign stealing in its natural form is cheating. You're using the knowledge that they're providing and you're using it to help yourself. It's the same as when I was I've always had good speed. I stole a lot of bases. I would sit on the bench when we were at bat and I wasn't up and I would watch the pitcher's feet and you just watch his feet over and over again. And when he is going to go to first base or if he's going to commit to home, you knew the tells and you were able to get a jump. That's how you steal. That's how you're a good base stealer. I mean, watch Ricky Henderson. He did it. And so that's just, I'm taking information that they're providing and I'm using it to help myself and my team. I don't think that's bad. But you know what? To kind of wrap this up, Snowman brings it full circle back to the Steelers. He's enough of the baseball talk. He puts $5 in the tip jar and says, who is the front runner for the wide receivers coach? Look, I only am going off of reports that are out there publicly. We know that last Sunday we thought it was going to be Brian McClendon of South Carolina. Then Jerry Dulac of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette says, hold on, there's other people being interviewed, one of them being Jericho Cotchery. We talked about that on Wednesday. Now, a week later, Brian McClendon comes out and says he's going to stay at South Carolina. So everyone assumes that if it's just between two players, which is what Jerry Dulac also said, I keep saying players, two coaches, people, then you would think it's Jericho Cotchery's job. I don't know. We'll see. That's all we know right now. So there you go.
Anytime I hear the word Jericho, I just think of Walls of Jericho.
Yeah, the Walls of Jericho. Yep.
Yes.
And we'll end with this. Thaddeus, couldn't agree more. Pirates are a joke.
Yeah, Pirates are terrible. Great ballpark. I mean, any ballpark that you can get a fish sandwich and pierogies in the same 9 innings is great. I played infield. I played all infield positions except for first base. So I played second, third, and short.
Yeah. That's people are bringing up Barry Bonds' time in Pittsburgh. That was a long time ago. Yeah,
I mean, I'm actually probably probably not, maybe not. I actually saw Barry a ton in Three Rivers.
I saw him play more than once.
Yeah, I saw him a ton. Three Rivers.
That 91-92 team was still my favorite team ever. And see, then you started liking him when he started juicing as well. So that cheater goes out there and he's juiced out of his mind.
Jamba Juice. Yes, he was so big. I remember sitting there's a funny story. I have these funny stories, not as funny as Brian, Mr. 2 a.m. bad. But I have a funny story about when they lost to the Braves to go to the World Series. Me and my brother were out at a club drinking. And when the game was over, we thought it was still 2 outs. And we're telling everybody, why are you guys leaving? It's only 2 outs. And everybody is saying, dude, how drunk are you? The game is over. And we were like, really? I was so smashed. Like, I didn't even know the game was over. But watching Barry in left field, he was so big. He couldn't even cross his arms. Like, he just looked like a tank. And he looked so inflexible as a left fielder. He just didn't look like he could actually throw. But he used to mash in San Francisco.
Hitting him into McCovey Cove. Hey, the kudos to him, though, for never just going to an AL team and being a designated hitter. He did put a glove on his
Yes.
hand. He did go out in the
Yes.
field, which I
Yes.
think qualifies you as an actual baseball player. So
And
take
so the
that for
Mr.
what it's
T, and so the Mr. T Steeler fan 122, Heinz Field is where Three Rivers used to be. The Pirates baseball stadium is kind of, I don't know, it's like direct
well,
line.
the parking lot that share that PNC Park and Heinz Field share is where
Share,
Three Rivers
yeah.
used to be. And
Yeah,
then
kind of like
they
right,
built Heinz next to it and PNC on
yeah,
the other side.
yeah, doing this, yeah. But it's like, yeah, it's just real close. You can walk.
Oh my gosh, look at these. Look at this. Look at this name. Orlando Merced. That's Pirate. Get out of here.
You
He used to have
crazy.
some sweet Oakley glasses, though. Here's my all-time favorite. Ezra brings it up. Andy Van Slyke. My all-time
Well,
favorite Pirate.
Pops was my favorite Pirate.
That was before my time.
Pops was my guy.
All right, Lance, anything else to say before we call it a show?
No, I don't. Another good one, Jeff. Another one in the books.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry for the technical difficulties earlier. Hopefully you stuck with us. Seem to be rectified now. Make sure you check out Brian Anthony Davis and Tony Defio tomorrow, Monday, for the Steelers Q&A. That's right. He doesn't even know I changed it. He's going to find out soon. I got to call him. So check him out. It'll be a crazy free-for-all with him, as it always is.
Guess what, Jeff? And guess what? I'm gonna tee it up for those guys tomorrow. Sure. If you have, since it's a Q&A,
yep,
ask Brian any random Steeler factoid or ask him any random Steeler question, and I'm gonna guarantee you he will know at least 8 out of 10. I'm telling you, like, pull stuff from all over and just quiz him on the show, and you guys will be freaked out that he probably will know all of them.
He's pretty good. He's pretty good. Absolutely. So, but yeah, ask trivia, ask him questions. It'll be fun. So check that out. Lance, why don't you send us off?
And as always, listeners, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe.
Amen. We'll see you next Sunday for another episode of the Homer and Hater Show.